My. Worship is like blazing a trail. The issue with blazing a trail is that there's a lot of obstacles when you are in the genesis of creating a path. And the church has a tendency to go through great pain to get to a certain destination and then return back to the same destination over and over again because that's the place we've already been willing to blaze the trail. The problem is we quickly get stagnant and we don't progress from glory to glory because you can't ever lose the heart to continue to explore the unknown. That's why the church typically goes through cycles where there's great revelation and there's great oil in the area of worship, and then there is just years of regurgitated rhetoric in worship. And it sounds like the same people saying the same thing, doing the same thing with the same oil, and it doesn't have an impact anymore. It's not impactive anymore. And the Spirit of the Lord will, in that moment, begin to raise up something that is so authentic that the things that have gone before will have a tendency to war against this new authenticity. And the Spirit of the Lord wants to do something specifically in the earth in this day that eye has not seen and ear has not heard. The thing that is yet to enter into the heart of man is available to a people if you will get out of the mindset of doing fast songs followed by slow songs, followed by sermons, followed by altar calls, followed by the laying on of hands, followed by the dismissal. And one of the most incredible things, and I want you to stand for just a moment. It's just good to do that. It's just good to learn to make worship as inconvenient as possible for people. I like to make church as absolutely inconvenient as possible for people so I'll know who I'm going to battle with. If you are convenience driven, then you need to go to the church that looks like a parade. But if you're going to go to the church that looks like warfare, you don't need to be convenience driven. You need to be victory driven. People that say, I don't care what it costs, we're going to win. If I got to fight with 3 of us, we're going to win. And one of the most powerful things you can possess as Pastor began to come up here and lead us and begin to talk to us about warfare and crossing over into warfare, as we got right on the edge of that and things began to move. I understand that one of the most powerful things you can possess in warfare is the element of surprise. If you're going to battle, one of the most powerful things you can possess is the ability to catch your enemy off guard. I remember when we retaliated for the September 11th attacks. I was preaching at Brownsville. Pastor Richard was there. I was in the middle of an altar call, and he comes up on the platform and says, we just turned some bombs loose. And we turned the whole meeting in, and we're like, everybody expected this to happen at a certain time. Nobody expected it to happen at 11:45 on a Sunday morning Central Time, but the element of surprise caught the enemy off guard. And one of the ways that the church has historically failed is when God begins to do something new, we do not know how to transition from what God is doing to what God is wanting to do. And I want to show you this specifically in this context. One of the reasons why we do not possess the element of surprise in the church is because we've lost our authenticity. You do not have to go back very far in the culture of war to find antiquated methods of warfare. Do you know that it was not very long ago that one army would face another army, they would blow a trumpet, and they would start walking toward each other and shooting each other? They called that honorable. I call it ignorant. You put your red coats on, we'll put our blue coats on, we blow a horn, you blow a horn, and we'll walk toward each other and start shooting. That's why they say I had such a difficult time with the American Indian. When they wanted to try to drive the American Indian off of their land, they had a very difficult time because the Indian didn't say, I'll meet you over here at 1:30 and we'll blow a trumpet and we'll walk toward each other and start shooting. The Indian hide up in a tree. And somebody with a red coat come by and I never even know they were there. They possessed the element of surprise because their warfare was authentic. It was not some kind of cheap imitation of a great original. I don't believe the problem in the church is that we're doing the wrong stuff. I believe the problem in the church is we've been doing the right stuff too long. I don't believe what we're doing is wrong. I believe it's over. And so it's not that we're doing the right thing. It's that we've been doing not that we're doing the wrong thing. It's that we've been doing the right thing too long. And God told us to do something, and we're still doing what God told us to do because we did not want to live in a place where there was a preceding word. So we are still trying to defeat our enemy with antiquated concepts of warfare because we've not been willing to step into a current word and allow God to do something that is so authentic that the enemy has no idea how to defend it. I began to talk to my friend here today who God hasn't delivered him from being an Alabama fan. And he's a University of Alabama football fan. And there was a coach that coached at the University of Alabama years ago by the name of Paul Bear Bryant. He invented an offense called the wishbone. The wishbone was a terribly effective offense. And nobody could defend the wishbone until teams began to study film. And once people had the ability to see the offense run, they then had the ability to construct a defense around stopping that offense. That's why if you follow sports today, you'll find, especially in the NFL, that a successful offensive cycle will only last for 3 seasons. Because some genius defensive coordinator will figure out a way to break down somebody else's offensive plan. Well, in the church, we've been running the same play for 50 years. And we wonder why we are not being successful doing things the way we've always done things. The reason why we are not being successful doing things the way we've always done things is because the enemy has spent years meeting us Sunday morning at 10 o'clock a.m. Central Time for 2 fast songs, followed by 2 slow songs, followed by the offering, followed by the announcements, followed by the sermon, followed by the altar call, and get you out by 11:57 so that you will feel better about your socialite country club existence instead of really getting touched by the power and the presence of Almighty God. And if we're going to be effective in the arena of warfare, we're going to have to repossess the concept of authenticity. And somebody is going to have to hear God tell them what he wants now and not tell them what he wanted then. Because we were not willing to go into a level of relationship that afforded us the revelation that was necessary. Authenticity is a secondary consequence of revelation. And I don't want to go too deep into this at a youth conference, but the revelation breeds authenticity. Authenticity then affords you the element of surprise. You can do something authentic, the enemy doesn't know how to defend it. Because we did not want to go through the gate of revelation to get to authenticity, we became relevant instead of authentic. There is a difference between being relevant and being authentic. Relevant means you have learned to mirror the culture in an attempt to change the culture. Authentic means you've learned to mirror God in an attempt to affect the culture. And because we don't know how to look like God, we're trying to win each other by looking like each other. That's why we got youth pastors that try to dress up like youth members and think if I look like them, I'll reach them. They're not looking for friends, they're looking for daddies. They got friends, they want fathers. Hear me now. And because we have not known how to be authentic, we've simply become cheap imitations of authentic things. And we now have this incredible Jacob syndrome. Jacob believed to get his father to bless him, he had to dress up like his brother. Jacob did not believe God could bless him because he looked like him. He only believed God could bless him because he looked like Esau. And so Jacob got dressed up like Esau to try to get his father to bless him, because he was not willing to wait for the opportunity to get dressed up like Jesus to get his father to bless him. There is a brother you're supposed to get dressed up like, but his name's not Joel Osteen, and his name's not T.D. Jakes, and his name's not Rod Parsley, and his name's not Juanita Bynum. And I love all of them, and God bless all of them, but the brother you're supposed to get dressed up like is the Rose of Sharon. He's the Lily of the Valley. He's the fairest of 10,000. He's the bright and morning star, and you can't watch him. You can't meet him by watching TV, and you can't become like him by listening to Christian CDs. You're going to have to go to the secret place to discover what his face looks like, and it's there we become dangerous. It's there we become dangerous. And so in reaching your generation, we need to understand that authenticity is not when we learn to mirror the culture. We do not need to become relevant to the culture. We need to become relevant to heaven. Listen, friend, catch this now. You guys going somewhere? Come on back up. I'll do this thing for you. I'll tell you when it's time to sit down. Because if you start walking off right now, everybody's going to watch you walk off. I want it inconvenient for you too. Now listen, catch this. Catch this. This is what we said. Well, this is the kind of music they're playing on the radio. Let's start playing that kind of music in the church. If that kind of music was going to help them, they'd be getting help by listening to the radio. This looks like MTV. Let's make the church look like MTV. Let's become relevant to the culture. Let's become hip, and let's make them look at us and say, they want us because we dye our hair, or because we spike our hair, because we do this, or because we do that, or because we. So we always attempt to get in alignment with the culture instead of getting in line with the kingdom. But the culture is not crying out for somebody to change it by converting itself to its nature. The culture is crying out for somebody to create a subculture that is greater than the current culture. The current culture is illegitimate. That's why it won't last. That's why trends fade, but the kingdom remains. And so God is wanting to raise up something that is so authentic that it brings transformation. Not because it looks like Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, but because it looks like the kingdom of Almighty God. And that's where the transformation begins to come. So I want you to understand that if you will let Him, God is going to begin to lead us into some places of some incredibly unusual worship. Some Sunday morning services that last until 2 o'clock. And some Wednesday night youth services that last 3 hours after the adult service has ended. And you find out where parents' hearts are, because they'll pray a soccer game goes into overtime, but try to yank their kids out of church after an hour and a half on Wednesday night. If little Johnny was in the 12th inning in the All-Star game, you'd be out there with your shoe-polished windshield, but heaven forbid the church service go past 8:30 because you're ready to go home and get some rest. I'm telling you, when I grew up, I know we were old school, but when I grew up and revival came, we just slept under the chair. And I'll hear stuff come out of my mouth sometimes and say, God, where'd that come from? He'll say, you got that when you were sleeping under the chairs. They didn't rush us out of church because we had homework. God's going to begin to take us into some unusual places and some unusual streams. And in that moment, I want you to understand that if we will go where God by revelation is asking us to go, there's an authenticity that we are beginning to inherit. And you're hearing pastors say, I don't know what happened in my Sunday morning service. I didn't even know what to say. I didn't even know what to do. I didn't even know how to move. I had my sermon ready. Didn't feel like I could minister my sermon. People came to the altar and I didn't have an altar call. People cried and people wept and people began to intercede and people began to travail what's happening. God is coming in with a wave of something we've never seen before, and that is why the enemy will always entice you to say, hey, come over here. Growth is in familiar. Familiarity is where growth is. Come do what other people are doing, Jacob. Dress up like Esau, and then you can get the blessing. Follow the model that is relevant to the culture. And God is saying, forget the model that is relevant to the culture and become the model that is relevant to the kingdom. And when you begin to do that, all of a sudden, the enemy says, uh-oh. I knew how to defend the Xbox youth group, and I knew how to defend their youth group where they run around orange cones in the parking lot and pass an egg back and forth on a spoon and knock a beach ball around up in the air. I know how to, but I don't know how this travailing and this wailing and this crying and this going after God and these calling a fast and calling a sacred assembly and calling the priest and the prophets together to begin to pray, sitting under stewardship and sitting under teachers and sitting under leaders and I don't know what to do with this. All of a sudden something authentic begins to be birthed, and the enemy cannot defend anything he has not seen. One thing that the enemy does not have is the power to create. And because he cannot create, it is very difficult for him to defend anything that is creative. His whole ideology is about imitation. So when he sees something that eye has not seen before, it's terribly difficult for him to defend because he is going through the catalog of the history of walking on the earth, tormenting the sons and daughters of God. And he sees something authentic and he says, wait a minute, I can't flip through my playbook and find out how to defend that because I've never seen that before. Amen? So I want you to, when you get into moments like this and you're uncomfortable and it's unfamiliar and it's unusual, understand that there is treasure hidden in that field. Go deep. The Bible doesn't say deep cries out to shallow. It says deep cries out to deep. If you ever learn to scuba dive, you'll never snorkel again in your life. Snorkeling is for people who are scared to dive. But once you ever get below the surface and find out there's some unusual things that live down deep. There's some big things that live down deep. The treasure is down deep. Nobody has ever uncovered a treasure in a foot of water. The treasure is in the deep place. And if you'll be willing to go deep, you'd be fascinated with what you'd find. Now, your friends are going to talk about you and make fun of you, and you're not going to get the trophy for the coolest person in the building, and your reputation may get assaulted, and nobody might sing your praise, and the girls might not walk out saying he's cute, and the boys might not walk out saying she's fine. But the Father will have looked down on you and seen somebody he can entrust with his glory.